On this episode of iFanboy, we're talking about Stumptown with writer Greg Rucka and artist Matthew Southworth. But we shot this about 2 years ago. It's from the vault, but it was so good that we wanted to make sure that we share it in the books out there, and you can still read it, so it's still good. So enjoy. This episode of iFanboy is brought to you by Click It or Ticket and GoDaddy.com. Hey, welcome to iFanboy. I'm Josh. We are here in the inner confines of the Oni booth with Greg Rucka and Matthew Southworth. We're here because you guys have a new book coming out, following up Queen and Country with a new series from Oni, Stumptown.
Yeah, we're doing a book called Stumptown. It's a private eye book. It's the way I tend to describe it is it's sort of the Rockford Files, except upgraded 30 years and upgraded in sensibility and in style, and it's it's a flawed detective main character, but in true PI sense. Mm-hmm. We didn't want to do something that was going to be. I'm a traditionalist when it comes to some of this stuff, and I didn't want a detective who was going to be, well, she's actually a psychic who sees dead people because she's obsessive compulsive. No, she's just a PI.
So that's why it's not an image book.
Yeah, well, don't throw down like that. What am I supposed to say to that? So no, we that was the goal. We just wanted to sort of tell those good PI things that certainly I grew up with. Just a detective who. There's a great Chandler quote, that Philip Marlowe says. I think it's in The Big Sleep. There's a bit where he's getting pushed around by like the DA, who says to him, "Why are you doing this, Marlowe?" And Marlowe's response is, "What else am I supposed to do? I'm using the gifts that I have, what intelligence God gave me, and a willingness to get pushed around on behalf of a client." Mm-hmm. And that's our detective. Just pure golden PI, except set in 2008, and it's got some lighthearted bits and it's got some dark bits, and it's not a noir in the sense that and I guess Matthew could talk more about this artistically. It's not rain-slick streets and that, but it has noir elements.
Is it a long-running series, or is it a finite? Or, is this set to go for as long as you?
It's 4 parts, 4 issues per case at this point, right? Yeah. That's the plan. And then there's a little time off, and then there's another case.
Now, is this the kind of stuff that you like to draw? I mean, it's real life. There's cars and there's people. Is a lot of guys sort of stick with the realistic stuff, or do you like doing this kind of thing?
I do. I'm not a good superhero guy yet. Mm-hmm. Yet. But I know what attractive women look like, and I know what people who are having a bad day look like intimately. And I'm really enjoying kind of drawing things that I recognize. Mm-hmm. The atmosphere of the book, to me, feels... It's a cliche to say that the city is a character, but
it's named Stumptown.
Yeah, exactly. And in this case, I really feel like it is a character, and so I'm trying to really get to know the city of Portland. I live in Seattle.
Okay.
So I'm having a really good time drawing things that I find Portland specific. I'm doing lots of research with that, and it's fun. I'm learning a lot about architecture. It's a long answer to a simple question.
No, that's what we like. Okay. I noticed you have a lot of cars in the book, and I've heard a lot of artists say that they hate drawing cars. Mm-hmm. You draw really good cars.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a car chase coming up or something like that?
Oh man, they already heard about that. Yeah. We were talking about the fact that if you watch like Rockford. Mm-hmm. It used to literally be like the third act was the car chase. Yeah. Literally like an 8-minute long car chase that if you tried to do, today, you'd be like, that's the most boring car chase, because just editing style. But we were talking about the fact that it's this trope in the PI, and we were like, well, how would you do that in a comic? So our plan right now is that in the second case, the second arc, there will be a car chase. And we're going to find a way to do a car chase that at least keeps us interested in the book, rather than as just two people, la 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 la, so it's not just talking heads and one of them with the steering wheel.
And we've talked about, I don't know if this is still the plan, but it being a whole issue.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A really complex, major Brian De Palma car chase,
Do you worry about doing an issue like that? Because
it's not that it's bad, and I think from a technical standpoint, it's really easy to appreciate, but those kind of things tend to read really fast, and so at the end you look at it and you're like, I spent my $3, my $3.50, and it took me a minute and a half to read it.
Well, I mean, but I've run into that before. When I started out writing for DC a lot, I love no copy panels. I love being able to give Matthew a description, no dialogue, and it's all up to you how you read it. I can't control how you're going to read it. If you blow through that because there are no words, therefore it's not important, that's your loss. If we can do a car chase issue that you read in 3.5 minutes that is exciting and cool and sort of thrilling, then we will have accomplished.
Yeah, I don't even think that it has to be bad. It's sometimes it's just that you're like, oh, I want to know what happens next. So so you rush through it. Like Walking Dead issues tend to be like that, where you read them in 2 minutes. And it's not like you didn't get a lot, but it's just like,
See, I actually have to say, just in our own defense, I'm not worried about that. The first issue is, it's how many pages did it come out?
35.
30.
oh,
35.
So 35 pages first issue, so it's dense. So you know what? If you get a 24-page car chase issue that was surrounded by a 32-page dense and is going to be followed by a 32-page dense, I think you can suck it up, especially if we did our job and entertain.
yeah.
Plus, in answer to your question about what I like to draw,
Yeah.
Architecture.
Architecture and cars. That I kind of feel like is the real fun of comics.
Like, are you a car guy?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. I didn't even know what kind of car this was when he gave me the script, and then I found out it was another kind of Mustang, where I was already drawing Mustangs.
See, that was the whole point.
Right. I eventually figured it out. But no, what I also really like drawing, I really like seeing if I can force you to slow down and speed up the way I want you to.
Right.
It doesn't mean I can do it, but maybe I can. And to me, ideally, in this sort of fantasized vision of a car chase story that we haven't even really discussed, that you would...
If this never happens now, this is all a wash.
This is going to be the most exciting thing.
I figure, honestly, it'll be issue 10.
Okay. They're going to create a whole new Eisner category.
There you go. Best car chase in the comic.
But no, the idea that you could start the issue and it's slow and it's laying everything out, and then at some point it takes off, but it still should take you a long time to get to the end, because using the Brian De Palma example, those sequences, they're long and they're involved, and there are several acts within each sequence. In the Untouchables with the Odessa Steps rip-off sequence, homage. That's what I would hope that we could do with something like that. And hope that we can do, I try to do some of that in the first issue. That's one reason it's 35 pages. Greg has been really nice about allowing me to stretch and compress and things.
Do you have, I know if you're working on a Marvel or a DC book, it's 22 pages. So with this one, do you do what feels right, or do you have
Oni's very generous. It's certainly to us. And James Lucas Jones is editing the book, has consistently come back and pretty much been, well, what do you need? And we'll make it work. And I think for the first issue in particular, that's vital, that we be able to tell our very first part of our very first story the way we want to tell it. I think as the series progresses, you're going to see issues be of more consistent length. Because I actually think, I think that structure aids in comic writing. I think being able to say, look, you might want 36 pages, but you got 30. And you need to make it work in 30. And that's part of the mechanism of this industry.
Well, I imagine
comics are.
I imagine like doing something for 52 really, hone those chops, to the point where, it's good that you can go then do this, but you've also got the discipline of what that was before.
Yeah. Well, and I've always responded really well to that sort of, I like that puzzle aspect. I like that there's really only a finite number of moves you have in a comic book. And when you start, it's infinite, and it's like a game of chess. Every time you place a panel, every time you use a page, you are forcing yourself to an ending. And unlike chess, well, I don't know, maybe you can extend the analogy to say if you do it right, it's a win, and if you do it wrong, you lose. But I think that structure is actually a very helpful structure. I really do like that.
What do you think of the argument of I guess, people who are writing for trade versus writing for issues? Like, is that something you think about when you're doing stuff? I tend to think your stuff reads well in issues, but with a larger picture in mind.
Well, I cut my teeth on the short story, so I like the standalone, but I love comics, and part of what comics are is a periodical form. So that, we wanted to, especially, with the start of Stumptown, it was a first issue that you would read and you would have a sense of completion in it, but that it would carry you forward to the next. If I'm doing my job well, I'm writing a story that you're going to be able to read, month to month in installments, and it'll carry you forward. And then ultimately, when it's bound together and looks all nice and pretty, and you read it, it reads differently, but just as well. That it works in both. It works in both sort of temporal forms, I guess is the only way to put it.
One of the things that I love about comics, and I hope that we're able to pull this off, and it's certainly the master plan, is that not only do you come to some sense of completion with issue 1, but questions remain. That that if I check back here at this store, Wednesday the 28th of whatever,
be back here in 30
chapter, and here it comes.
Right.
And that I think that creates a really great sense of anticipation, and like, here it's coming, I'm going to get my answers, and it sort of makes it a two-person process, the author or authors and the reader, and they're both sort of collaborating. Like, you're asking the questions as you're waiting for the thing, and we're going, well, I'll tell you in just a minute, and there's your answer. So I think that's cooler than a trade paperback, personally.
Get to GoDaddy.com. Get reliable, secure web hosting without the long-term contract. GoDaddy's hosting plans are bigger and better than ever with 99% uptime, free 24/7 support, and no annual commitment. Check out revision3.com/GoDaddy for a list of all the amazing GoDaddy deals from Revision 3. Just for now, if you enter the code FAN8, you can get 10% off any order. Thanks to GoDaddy.com for sponsoring iFanboy.
This episode of iFanboy is brought to you by Click It or Ticket. That means put a seatbelt on. Don't be a moron. Seriously. Also, this Memorial Day weekend, the cops are all going to be working together. They're going to be looking for people who don't have seatbelts on, and it's going to be like a big thing. And that's a dumb ticket. That's not something you want to pay for. You want to buy comics with that, right? Am I right? So let's just, make it happen. Let's roll.
Greg, you seem like a meticulous writer. I mean, how much?
What does that mean?
We've talked to you a bunch of times. You clearly think about what you're doing. How much of this stuff is like, how specific are your scripts, and how does that work for you? And like,
no, he gets to answer that one.
Okay.
The artist is better. I think is much better suited to answer that question.
How specific are his scripts? They're specific to the point that I understand exactly what he's saying. And if I don't understand what he's saying and what the scene is actually about, I'm not paying attention enough, I think, in most cases. And then if I have a question, obviously I call Greg or email him or whatever. But, this is, I haven't done a lot of comics work. And one of the things that I like so much about working with Greg already is that there's lots of flexibility. So they're specific, but they're not ironclad in violet, contracts that you will produce this. They're like, this is what the scene is about, and this is how she feels, and this is how he feels. Now go to work.
Now, how much of the sort of, I guess, the graphic element, like, are you down to this many panels on the page, like it has to play this way, or does it depend on the page?
Well, I mean, when it's scripted, I write full script, and it'll be page 1, panel 1 looks like this.
Right.
Panel 2 looks like this, and sometimes I'll be like this angle, but all of that to me is there to give him options. If I ask for a 5-panel page, and I've done my job right, Matthew knows what I'm trying to accomplish with the page, and then he can sit there and be like, I can do this better in 4, or I can do this better in 7. It shouldn't be, very rarely I'm going to be like, no, only 5, Once I figure out, once a script, there tends to be a moment where I'm like, this is a moment I really see clearly, and I would like to try to replicate this image in my head. But, my job, my professional training is as a writer. I know how to write a story. I know how to make words do what I want them to do. I know how to write good dialogue. I understand character and theme and plot, all those fun things. Mm-hmm. I have no visual sense at all.
Still.
Well, look, I've been around comics enough that I've learned. Mm-hmm. But it would be, to me, the height of arrogance to turn to Matthew and say, draw it this way. Mm-hmm. Because, if that's the case, I think he would quite reasonably turn around and say, draw it yourself. You know? Mm-hmm. And that's not the same thing as to say that, discussing story isn't an option. It always is. Mm-hmm. Telling about what we want to accomplish. But, I can sit here and I say, well, I think this is a good idea for a visual. Mm-hmm. But I acknowledge when I say that my understanding of composition and composition of a page is not nearly as sophisticated as Matthew's. Mm-hmm. And by the same token, I wouldn't expect Matthew to turn around and come back and say, well, I know you're giving this character this motivation, but it seems to me that they should be drunk all the time. Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, great suggestion, not where I'm going, you know? You got to... The joy of this medium for guys like me, guys who can't draw, is that it's collaborative. Mm-hmm. And in the best instances of that collaboration, you create something that is going to be greater than the sum of its parts. That together Matthew and I make something that's better than what either of us can make alone. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's the best you can get out of comics. I love that. That's the magic of the medium. So
one of the things that your Oni work specifically is that you're finding these guys all over the place that I have not heard of, but have really come to like their work. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of Brian Hurd or Chris Somney or lots and lots of others.
Rolston, Norton.
Exactly, and a lot of them have gone on to that. So that must be pretty cool for you to you said you haven't done a lot of comics work, so where do you find him, and what's it like to get a call from Greg Rucka? And
you want to tell that story?
All right. Yes, it is really cool. This story is kind of complicated and stuff that Greg may or may not know. My oldest friend, Joe Casey, writes comics. So you know Joe Casey.
I do know Joe.
He gives you a hard time at the end of these every year, doesn't he?
Oh, you've watched the show.
I have. I've seen it a couple of times. We used to do comics together as teenagers. We couldn't find girlfriends, so we drew comics.
Joe couldn't find girlfriends?
He couldn't find his own. But I sort of fell out of it and blah, blah, blah. Years later, Joe and I were talking, and I said, I kind of want to get back into drawing comics. What do you think I ought to do? And he goes, go get this Queen and Country script book and draw some samples out of that. So I did, and they were terrible. I didn't even hand them over. But I realized that's what I wanted to draw, was Queen and Country. So I would come to conventions, and I would say that to Greg, and I don't even think I introduced myself. I think I would just be like, I want to draw Queen and Country.
Oh, that's a nice kid.
And and I said that to James, and then they were like, we're going on hiatus with Queen and Country. Greg's got this new thing. So then I'm assisting another friend, Stefano Gaudiano, who inks Daredevil.
And he worked on Gotham Central.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they called Stefano to see if he could do it. Mm-hmm. And Stefano is a world-class overcommitter. And that worked in my favor because we were going to work on it together. And then Stefano had so much other work to do that he just couldn't do it.
He actually very quickly backed out of it. And sort of said, but here's Matthew. Mm-hmm. And we were like, excellent.
Wow.
And frankly, and no offense to Stefano, better. Mm-hmm. Because stylistically, I think what you're doing is more suited. So...
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. But yeah, I mean, it's a delightful situation, at risk of using a really bizarre adjective in this case, because I'm being asked by a guy who obviously knows what he's doing to share in the benefits of doing something that we like.
Yeah,
it's not like I'm struggling so I can maybe draw Kid Flash, which it would be fun. I'd draw a great Kid Flash car chase issue.
He would be faster than the car.
Well, that's the trick. How do you slow him down? There's the story problem. So yeah, it's really great.
That's awesome because you sort of envisioned what you wanted and you went after it,
and then
through luck and perseverance, I guess. Nice work.
Yeah, well, it's going real well so far.
An accident.
No. Yeah, there are no accidents.
No, I mean, seriously, it's a great example of what we talk about in this industry all the time, which is you got to commit to what you're doing. And you commit to the work and you do the work and you make your opportunities that way. There have been instances going back to the root of the question. A lot of times, James Lucas is looking around. He sees art. He sees people he likes. When we were talking about Stumptown, we were talking about what sort of stuff we wanted. Stefano's name kept coming up, and it was James that said, "Well, why don't I give him a call?" Because there's no way that he's got the time. So when Stefano said, "Yeah, he'd be interested," we were like, "Well, that's really cool." But in a way, it was kind of, I mean it sincerely. It's better in so many ways. I love Stefano's work, but I love the fact that we've got Matthew because everything he's doing is his own on this, and I kind of feel like he comes free and clear. Stefano, for lack of a better phrase, leads back to Michael Lark, which leads back to Gotham Central, and that's not what this is.
Right.
This just isn't. And in its own way, it was really liberating. It was kind of like, what? Then all bets are off. Let's approach this fresh. Let's do the designs. Let's get in there and let's have some fun. So.
And you basically built this thing from the ground up. How long has this been going on?
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's like a year.
Okay.
A year. One thing that I'm doing, or have done, that Stefano, you said built it from the ground up.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah, I've been building some 3D models. Like I spent several days building an apartment so I would have the exact reference I needed, even though that apartment only shows up on, I think, 2 pages, which was, it was stupid, is the word I'm looking
Perhaps
for.
a little overly.
Yeah. Let's just say that's a mistake we won't be making again.
That's right. But I also built a very detailed model of Dex's house, the main character's house. So some of those things, for different reasons, I just was focused on that, or Greg had something going on. We didn't just leap out of the starting gate. There was some time to get going and ramp up, which is cool. One of the things I've discovered by building that house is Dex has a brother who likes to play video games. As I was building the house, I put the TV on the wall adjoining Dex's bedroom, and she adores her brother. Everybody in the book apparently adores her brother.
She's got a brother with Down syndrome, and one of the shorthands in the book is if somebody asks how her brother's doing, they're okay. Anybody who's mean to her brother, is a bad guy.
There's a clue to reading.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Everybody loves Ansel. Everybody thinks Dex is kind of a loser, but they love her brother. So there you go. Anyway, you were saying.
Yeah, so one of the things I discovered about that was once I built that model, put the TV on the wall, realized that the door to Dex's bedroom leads around the wall, which is connected to the TV. I realized he's the kind of guy, I think, that probably gets up early in the morning to play video games when she's trying to sleep, and she loves him so much that I assume she probably just lets him and loses sleep. Once I got that, there was like a little bit of and we haven't even discussed that. I don't know if that's totally true, but it feels true. I got something about her which came from building the house.
It's really neat that so much thought is going into. I mean, not to be. It's a mini. It's an indie book. It's not going to have a giant audience. It's a black and white book, but there's still just as much going into it as.
It's a color.
Oh, it is color.
Color.
I read the Ashcan.
Yeah.
No, well, there we go.
It's actually going to be in color. But yeah, I mean, if we're brutally honest, if we break 15,000 readers an issue, I'll be stunned.
Yeah.
In trades we'll go higher. Yeah, that's right. There'll be a fractured. But, I mean, we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And we don't have any illusions. But, yeah, of course it matters and we do it right. And as for putting the TV on the wall, yeah, she'll let him do it, but you're forgetting the other reason. That way she knows when he's playing.
Ah, yeah.
See? So there you go.
Greg, you've got a habit of having female protagonists.
Oh, yeah.
What's with that?
I like them.
Really? That's
it. I like strong female characters.
And
I like women. I like the dividends you get when you take traditionally male roles and you recast the protagonist as a female, and then you're honest to that rather than going, oh look, guy with tits. You know, when you go, no, she's a woman, and you know we are, and it's less so now. I mean, we've got Sue Grafton's Alphabet Soup, and before Sue, you've got V.I. Warshawski, and you can go back. We've got. It's not like there haven't been female private investigators before, but I hadn't seen this done this way, and I like being able to take it and turn a little bit on its ear. And I'm also, I've always been interested in gender studies. I've always been interested in sexual politics. There's some very deliberate ambivalence in the first issue about Dex's sexuality. And it isn't until the second issue where I think she's got a line where somebody says, oh, I thought this, and or I made you for X. And she says, I haven't made myself for anything. I mean, she's kind of asexual, actually. But all of those things interest me. And that's one of the reasons why I tend to keep going back.
Do you feel like you're building from Carrie to Tara to Sasha to
well, they're all
Renee?
Yeah, well, they're all different women.
Yeah.
And they're all different characters. And all gender is, to me, is an element of character in the same way that wearing glasses is an element of character. And being raised Roman Catholic is an element of character. Being straight is an element of character. Gender influences how we interact with the world. Everybody here, all four of us, and I include the cameraman, we walk through a parking garage at 3 a.m. alone. Our primary concern isn't whether or not we're going to get raped. And that's a gender issue. That's a societal gender issue. We don't really wander down the street in the middle of the night worrying about that. Society kind of forces women to do that. And the second you start looking through that kind of lens, you're talking about a facet of the world worth exploring. It doesn't have to be polemic, I'm not saying that's what everything's about. That's not what this is about. Stumptown is not about the fact that Dex is female. It's not. She just happens to be a woman, and that's one of the things that influences her character.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
I'm really looking forward to the series. I've loved all the stuff. I look forward to seeing more. I dug what I've read of it so far, and cool.
We're
Thanks.
very excited about it, so thank you. It was
Awesome.
good talking to you guys.
Thank you. Also doesn't tend to pick up other stuff, so don't worry so much if a police car goes screaming by. Well, though I would go look. I would probably check
here?
that out.
I would notice.
I would, yes.
Somebody tried to steal the ass.